So far, we have been configuring beans using annotations. This is simple and easy, but in Spring, we can also configure beans using pure Java code. And this is useful in scenarios where we need more control over creation of beans. For example, if we need to configure beans conditionally, we have to use code. We cannot use annotations. Another use case is configuring beans for third-party code. If we are using third-party libraries that we can't control, we cannot apply annotations to their classes. Again, we have to use code. Let's see how this works. We start by removing the service annotation from our classes. Just take a note here that we have assigned this bean the PayPal name. We're going to revisit this later, okay? So let's comment this out. And one more time, in the Stripe class, we remove service and primary. And one more time in the order service. Now, to configure these beans using code, we go to our project. In this package, we add a new class called app_config. The name doesn't really matter, but app_config is a common convention. Now, we start by annotating this with configuration. This tells Spring that this class is a source of bean definitions. Just pay close attention here because we have two similar annotations. One is configuration, the other is configurable. Make sure to use configuration. Sometimes I make this mistake myself, and that's a common source of errors. So configuration. Now, in this class, we add one or more methods for creating beans. Here's the first one, public payment service. Now, we don't want to call this payment service. We should call this Stripe. That is the name that will be assigned to our bean. So we don't want to call this get Stripe payment service because the name of a bean should not be a verb. It should be a noun. So we call this Stripe just like before. And in this method, we simply return a new Stripe payment service. Now, right away, you can see the benefit of this approach over annotations. Because here we're writing code, we have full control over bean creation. So we can have logic like if whatever, return a new Stripe payment service, otherwise return something else. So here's a method. Now we should annotate this with the bean annotation. And this tells Spring that this method is a bean producer. Okay? Now, similarly, we could create a method for PayPal service. Let's skip it for now. We'll come back to it in a minute. Next, we define a method for creating an order service. So order service, and we call it order service. Now, in this method, we return new order service. Now, order service needs a payment service. So here we can call the Stripe method to get a Stripe payment service and pass it to the order service. Again, we have full control over bean creation. Now let's annotate this with the bean annotation. Good. That's literally all we had to do to configure beans using code. Now, as you can see, this approach is more verbose. We are writing more code. So for simple scenarios, stick to annotations. But if you really need more control over bean creation, then you can configure beans this way. Okay. Now let's run the application to make sure we haven't broken anything. All right, everything works exactly like before. Beautiful. Now let's add another method for the PayPal service. So public payment service, PayPal. And again, we mark this with bean. And here we return new PayPal payment service. Now here we can do something interesting. And I want you to do this as an exercise. So currently, our order service is using the qualifier annotation to choose a payment service. Now, this annotation is no longer used because when creating an order service in app_config, we are passing a Stripe payment service, right? So let's simplify this class. We're taking this responsibility of choosing a payment service outside of this class, okay? Now this is cleaner. Now back to our app_config. Here's what I want you to do as an exercise. I want you to define a configuration setting in our application YAML file that determines our payment gateway, which can be Stripe or PayPal. Then read that configuration setting into app_config, inject it into the code using the value annotation, and in this method, use some condition to wire the order service with the right payment service. It's fairly simple. It's going to take 5 to 10 minutes. Pause the video, do that, and then come back, watch the rest of this video. All right, here in application YAML file, we define a new property. We can call that payment gateway or payment service, whatever you prefer. The value can be Stripe or PayPal. Next, we should inject this into app config. So in this class, we declare a private field of type string called payment gateway. Then we annotate it with the value annotation. Here we read payment gateway. Now we can optionally give it a default value like Stripe. Now, in the order service method, we check if payment gateway equals Stripe, then we return an order service with Stripe. Otherwise, we return new order service with PayPal. Let's run the application and see what happens. So currently, we are using Stripe, beautiful, but we can go to our application YAML file and change this to PayPal, rerun the application, and now our application is behaving differently. This is a much better design than hard coding a payment service inside the order service.